Hi, welcome. I'd like to talk about 5 ways that you can help students retain information. Now, each one of these 5 things could be its own video, so I'm going to try very hard to keep it short. However, if you'd like more information on any of these, you can visit my website. It's thebeardedmathman.com. I'll put the link in the description. And at any point, if you find this video entertaining or helpful, you could really help me out by just subscribing or visiting my YouTube channel, clicking like, or leaving a comment. Anyway, let's get started. The first way that I would like to discuss that you can help students retain information so they can use it in the future is by helping them learn it more deeply the first time they learn it. A topic that would be a good example would be finding the x and y intercept of a linear equation. So instead of just teaching them to substitute 0 for x when finding the y-intercept, or substituting 0 for y when finding the x-intercept, or even worse, like y equals mx plus b, just teaching them that that b term is the y-intercept. If you help them understand why x equals 0 for a y-intercept, then they will be able to apply that idea to all kinds of different forms of linear equations, and it should make a smoother transition to the future when they start graphing. Well, the next thing they'd be graphing usually would be quadratic equations, and then after that polynomials and things, and then logarithmic functions and exponential functions. So why those quote-unquote zeros are so important is what students really should understand, and it will help them apply what they've learned in the future. The second way that you can help students to understand or retain information and recall it in the future is by really forcing them to read both the English and the math. See, the spatial arrangement of math is what makes it its own language, and it's kind of tricky because English isn't written that way. The spatial arrangements of words doesn't change the meaning of the words, but with math it absolutely does. So here, try this little experiment. If you can put a problem that's in the topic you're currently covering in your class, if you can put a problem on the board without any instruction and students start doing stuff, I would say you have a problem on your hands. The thing is, they're just doing things, they're finding false cues in the math, and they're just performing these steps for no reason whatsoever. So they don't understand what they're doing, and since they don't understand what they're doing, they're not going to be able to apply it in the future. So I would really make sure that they understand what it is they're doing and that they understand what the math says. A good example is square roots. If they understand that a square root is a way of writing a question in math, then when they're simplifying square roots or working with them, they're understanding that they're just answering the question. The question that a square root asks is, what number squared equals the radicand? If they go back to that every time, then their understanding is going to be much better, and their ability to recall will be better, and their ability to deal with things like cube roots and higher order roots will be much easier. The way students take notes is very, very important. If they're passive, in other words, they're just copying down whatever you write on the board, they might as well just copy the book. And if that would work, then they could copy the book cover to cover, and boom, everything in the book is in their head. But it doesn't work that way. The students need to integrate the information, and to do that, it requires some aggressiveness, it requires some critical thinking, and being passive just won't cut it. So students, they do need to write, especially when it's something new. They do need to copy down the process and the procedure. However, they need to be writing out questions. They need to be writing out things that they're realizing. They need to be writing down the big idea. They need to write down why it is we're doing the math. One way that you can help with this is, say you have some equation, you could have them describing what each of the parts of the equation are referring to, going back to the concept. And I'll give you an example of that here in just a minute. But anyway, the notes should be a record of their thinking. The notes shouldn't be just some random math book written in their own handwriting. The notes should be for themselves. I put it to them like this. I tell the students that when they're taking notes, what they're doing is they're writing a letter to future them. They don't know when they're going to need it. They don't know exactly what they're going to need, but there's something that's going on in class right now that they're going to forget that they're going to need. So they need to be writing down a lot more than I write down. A student that says, I understand how to do it, I just can't explain it, doesn't really understand it. Their ability to recall is going to be, well, they're going to have little shot of remembering what it is that they understand when they can't say it. Now, it's likely the case that without language we don't have memory, but even if it's not that extreme, the ability to verbalize something will make the memory strong, because memories are stories. So if they can tell the story of what it is they understand, if they can articulate very carefully, not using a million pronouns, if they can articulate very carefully using rich mathematical language, then they're going to be able to retain that, because there's a story that goes along with those ideas. And just pay extra shipping and handling and you get this added bonus. When they're able to articulate and verbalize their thinking, they're going to be better critical thinkers. And that will definitely transcend outside of the math classroom. So that is a huge thing for a student to be able to do. So articulate what it is they're thinking will promote their ability to retain it in the future. The fifth and final tip I have for you today that will help students recall information is having rich quality assessment materials and activities for them. A lot of the time, if you can make them use some piece of past information in conjunction with what it is they're learning now, you're going to deepen their understanding, and the deeper their understanding, the more likely it is that they will be able to recall what it is that they're learning. Beyond that, it will also help them it'll help them be in practice of recalling other information. So I'm not talking about if you're teaching logarithms that all of a sudden you have them practicing using the quadratic formula for some random reason. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is perhaps the solution to some problem is got a concept that's being applied and it's embedded. Like you have to use maybe the Pythagorean theorem to find the radius of a circle, so you can find a sector angle or something like that. So to summarize, the 5 things that you can do to help students better retain the things that they're learning in class so they can recall them in the future. Number 1, make sure that you do things to help them understand the concept deeply. So no Mr. or Mrs. Worksheet King or Queen. Kudasoft is great and wonderful. Use those for days when you're going to be out. Problem with just doing worksheet and procedure is that the student's level of understanding is very surface level, and to have the ability to recall, they need to have a deep understanding. The second thing, make sure they're reading the math. There is information with the way math is written, and they need to be fluent in what that means. They also need to be reading the instructions that are written in English. The two of those things combined will make them think about what it is they're doing, and the more thinking about what they're doing, the more deeply that they will understand. Again, the third thing they need to do is they need to be able to verbalize. They need to be able to say what it is they're thinking. They need to be able to articulate very carefully not using a ton of pronouns, using rich mathematical language. The fourth thing is they need to be able to take quality notes. With quality notes, they need to be writing down a lot of thoughts and ideas. They need to write down things that are concerning to them. They need to write down things like, I think this might be the tricky part. Whatever it is that's going through their head related to the topic, they need to be writing those things down. The last thing, number 5, quality assessment. They need to be doing math that is rich, that applies many different concepts together, that integrates things together, I should say, and that will make them use the information that they have just learned in an unexpected new way. That will further strengthen the connections between math topics and their ability to reconstruct the things that they maybe had forgotten in the future will be much stronger. Again, if you found this video to be helpful or entertaining, you could really help me out by just clicking subscribe. Click like, leave me a comment, visit my YouTube channel, or you could visit my website, thebeardedmathman.com. If any of the examples that I've shown you are confusing to you, I will have detailed solutions written out on my website. And again, thanks for watching.